Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it's December 20th of 2020. I just ordered a Motorola uh, stylus. This is the Motorola Power, which has a 5,000 milliamp. Is it milliamp? Anyway, 5 milliamps. Don't think that's it. Anyway, battery's 5,000. And no, 4,000. I've forgotten. I think, no, 5,000. But I ordered because the stylus was 300 and it was 250, and then it was 200, and when it hit 200, I thought, I think I'll buy one because of the stylus. I know most people say that you're probably not going to use a stylus or whatever. I kind of like stylus devices. So I was going to order one, and then I've been using, in fact, with this and my son, we're sharing a service, Google Fi service, and they happen to. This is one of the phones they support. In fact, they sell them. So the Amazon price for the one with the stylus is down to 200. And I thought, I think I'll buy it. And then I thought, I think I'll go over and check the Google Fi site. And I went over, and they have this for $100. Well, the regular price is 200 with a $100 discount. So I ordered one, and they're saying it'll be the first week in January that it'll be available. But when I purchased something else, I can't remember. I think they shipped it earlier than they said, so I'm hoping I'll get it earlier. But anyway, so I'm going to have a new, basically the same except stylus support. I'll let you know. There's a ton. I mean, there are a ton of excellent reviews of the Motorola cell phones, and all of them. And some they put against each other, like the Motorola Power versus the stylus, and so forth and so on. So excellent. But I'll probably will tell you about the stylus now, but because even though there are reviews where people talk about that and show that in excellent reviews, I'll still probably tell you about what I'm doing with the stylus, probably showing you a little bit. That's not the purpose of this video. I would love it if people were asking me interesting questions. I mean, occasionally I get one, from my YouTube side, occasionally somebody asks a interesting question. But generally the things are like, hey, Jim, I like your videos, or will ask a specific something about, the keyboard or something like that. Really not interesting unless you want the answer to that question. So I have decided some time back that I'm going to start, because there are some great questions here and some great answers. And so I'm going to start stealing some of their questions. By the way, I've been reading these things, the questions and the answers, for years. Got hooked on this years ago. And I have posted 3 answers in all that time. But I do think there's sometimes I've wanted to answer something and thought, no, I'm not the best for that answer, or other people will do, better. So, but here is my chance to not have to worry about that. So this question is, what was the craziest thing that you ever witnessed while you were in the waiting room of a hospital emergency room? So, as I'm sure you've heard from me 1,000 times, I ended up working hospital security for actually over 30 years, from about 1972 to 2000. And then I thought that was going to be the end. But in 2000, when I retired hospital security, I'd worked for a number of hospitals over the years. St. Joseph Hospital, Trinity Lutheran Hospital, Research Medical Center, Research Belton Hospital. Same time I worked part-time at Menorah Medical Center, and I worked at Lee Summit Hospital for a year, and I don't know, probably something else. But in 2000 I quit, but then in 2000 I worked the 2000 census, which at that time, and now here we are in 2020, my God, the state of our nation, and it's just, but in 2000 I worked the 2000 census, and for a number of years I told people, well, you may find in some of my older videos that working the 2000 census made me feel so good about America and about the American people, and and I said, if you get a chance, to ever work the census, and they do it every 10 years, the 2000 census was, the 2010 census would be coming up. I said, take it. It made me feel, but about that time, things started getting kind of bad. And when the 2010 census, by that time, I thought, I hope the census workers don't run into, problems. And then, of course, by, 2020, my God, I'd be afraid to be a government employee of any type. I would be afraid to be a census worker and go out and ask questions of people. In the 2000 census, I had one that I called on, that was the way a whole bunch of people, now probably half of the people are now, person that, get off of my porch, don't you come back here, I'm not telling the government anything, blah, 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 But nobody else. In other words, a few people, when I did the 2000 census, there were two people who said, I'm not sure I want to answer questions. And then I just said, well, why don't we do this? I'll ask you the questions, and if you're not bothered by them, just go ahead and answer them. If you have a problem thinking why or whatever, just say, and then I'll try to explain to you, and then whatever you decide. Because at that time, there were some questions we positively had to get an answer to, and nobody had an objection. By the way, nobody had any objection. I think when I asked, I said, if we can go that way, and somebody said, why? And then I just explained why the government needed that information. But so I only had one bad person in the thing. But now, wow, that's how bad things have gone down, But I was not. Oh. So I did the 2000 census, then I went down with my son to Orlando, Florida, and we were down there for over a year or so. And after, I didn't really intend to work anymore, but I went down there and then I got I could also use a little extra money. But the main thing was I just, wanted to do a little something. So I went over to a private contract security company. Now, I worked for, I don't know if this was U.S. security or if it was United States security, because I ended up, which let's say it was U.S. security, because then later I ended up in Texas and I worked for a while for, let's say, United States security. So it was, those are private contract companies with those names, good names, but you know. So anyway, when I went to Texas and I went over to, let's say, U.S. security, might have been United States security. And I was looking for a job, just maybe sitting in a lobby, checking people in or out or something like that. Which was that's not like I worked in, you know, in the past. And filled out the application, and they were looking at it while I was thinking of doing something else. The guy came over, and well, the guy told the other guy, "This guy, he's got, you know, 30 years hospital security experience." When they came over, you know, I think one of them, I don't know if one or both of them came over. "We have a contract for security for a hospital. We want you to be in charge of security there." And I said, "No, not interested." And it was, you know, okay, well, we'll give you X amount of money, which was several dollars more than they were paying anybody else. And like an idiot, I took it. So for the first time, I wouldn't be working in hospital security. I wasn't actually working for the hospital. I was working for the contract. It was a contract company, and I go to this hospital. And this hospital was one of those that was, I forget, I might get the wrong name, Hospital Corporation of America, whatever, a big agency, a company, corporation that owned a whole bunch of hospitals and was looking for chances to buy other hospitals. And it was run by, I don't know if, well, he didn't run it at that time. The guy who headed up this corporation, I'm not sure if he started it or if his father started it or how he came into it, but a big time Republican, and who this corporation, the government came down on them so hard, major fines for violations of all types of, you know, cheating on Medicaid and Medicare, and well, I guess it wouldn't have been Medicaid, on Medicare, and all types of crimes. Of course, nobody ever went to jail. They got major fines. And the guy who, I think he was actually, like, I think his family started it. He left the head of the corporation, but he was given, I forget how many, you know how that goes. What do they call it, a golden parachute or something? He was given millions of dollars. He went down to Florida and was elected governor of the state of Florida, Republican governor of the state of Florida. So anyway, I went to work for this, well, let me back up a little bit. Anyway, I said, okay, I'll do it. So they said, okay, well, first thing we have to do is, you know, we have to run you out there. Well, of course, they had to do a background check, you know, police background. They did that. And so maybe I came back the next day, I don't know. So anyway, it didn't seem like I came back the next day. I just done it really quick. Anyway, the lieutenant or whatever he was in one of their patrol cars said, we got to drive you out to the hospital. And the director of plant operations, maintenance and that type of stuff, he has to interview you and approve you. And at that point, I sort of thought, okay, I made a mistake, because well, you know, I'd always worked in-house security, but one hospital that I was working at had a deal with a psychiatric hospital that was on their property, on the hospital's property. And so the guy at the psych hospital, we didn't go inside the psych hospital or patrol inside it was a parking lot, that type of situation. But unless, you know, something, a few times something came up. So the plant op guy, was at that psych hospital, was like our liaison or something like that. And I had a little bit of contact with the guy. And he was an idiot. I mean, I'm sure, if you had to get your boiler, fired up, or if you had to fix an electrical socket or something, he might have been fine at that. But he tried to tell me, what I should be doing or something like that, and I told him no. And I wasn't very polite about it. And now our director of security at the hospital that I worked for, he sort of, I can't remember what the issue was. He sort of said something to me, like, well, he's our, contract, or our contact. I said, I don't fucking care. Fuck him. Oh, okay. So this was going to be one of those, but, well, this was much worse than I thought. I'm kind of off the subject here, but I'll get to it. So the guy approved me. And so, well, then we went, well, it was before we went, okay, that's when we were driving, before we drove over the one, we got in a patrol car, and the lieutenant or captain or whatever he was, he opened up my police report. And he said, wow, so I've never seen one of these. And I said, what? He said, there's nothing on there, no, no DWIs, no, no, I forget what he said exactly, but it was like, I was thinking like, what? Because who are they hiring, So anyway, we go over there. I'm approved. So we start, also, yeah, before the lieutenant, he says, well, it'll be really great. You'll be able to really do a great job of doing this over there. And you can fix the problems and things that have happened in the past. And I said, what's happened in the past? He said, well, we're like the 6th or 7th security company that they've had. All the others they've gotten rid of, And I said, so each time somebody's bidding lower money probably to get the contract, and they're going to keep on doing that. So if we're the 7th company, I forget what the exact number was, I said, there'll be another one and before long, because the salesmen for these companies will come and they'll figure out how much, or they'll ask, how much are you paying, per hour for this, and they're going to underbid it. And he said, no, that's not the problem. He says, and then he told me some of the things with these different companies, and I said, I can't correct that. I said, there's nothing that we can do at this point. Even if we do everything perfect, these employees are not going to, they're going to just lump us all. We're all the same. They're professionals, they have bachelors of science degrees in medicine. They have 2 years of radiology or what, all that. They have all this stuff. They're professional, and there's nothing we can do to correct these things that have happened in the past. They had one security company where the security guard came in and they had a bunch of laptops delivered to the hospital, and they delivered them to plant operations and, left them stacked up there or whatever. And at plant operations is where, and they had, I figured they had a hidden camera. They didn't tell me that, and I'm not sure that the company I worked for, I knew there would be a hidden camera there. And I found out later it was aimed at the little cubicle that we had in there where we had our keys and I mean, everybody that worked there at that hospital had a ID card, and that's what got you in. When you got there, and the doors open and let you in or whatever. We had one ID card for security, and it was kept in the plant operations thing. We had to come and, knock on the door and go in to get the ID. Everything was just, the whole operation, everything was fucked up. Anyway, I told them, that, oh yeah. So they had these laptop computers delivered, and the security guard from one of the previous companies, he loads up some of the laptops and leaves with them. And of course, when he came to work the next day or whatever, the police were there to put handcuffs on him and take him away. I'm not sure if it was the same company or another company. For some reason, the hospital administrator came in like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning because there was going to be a meeting in this room, a meeting room or something, and he was coming in to make sure it was ready for the meeting. What kind of a place do you have where the hospital administrator has to come in at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning to make sure, why? What kind of a place do you have that you can't say, I want this room ready for such and such? But anyway, he came in and he heard a noise in a closet or something or other, and he went over and opened it up. There was the hospital security officer having sex with a housekeeping employee. By the way, I guess I have to say this nowadays, the security officer was male and the housekeeping employee was female, just in case you were wondering. You never can tell anymore. So anyway, the hospital security officer says, "Who in the hell are you?" to the hospital administrator. And the hospital administrator said, "Well, I'll show you who I am." And he just took the ID card and said, "You're fired." And the company was fired also. But so it was stuff like that, and I knew, okay, there's no way. And sure enough, there was no smoking allowed in the hospital. Okay, also, by the way, when the hospital started with security, apparently they had like 3 security officers on duty, 2 in the hospital, 1 outside patrolling or whatever. And as these things happened, it got down to where there was, I'm not sure at this point, I'm not sure if I remember, I don't think we had security during the daytime. Can't remember. But, hang on. At this point, there was just 1 security officer on duty, and they did not want us in the hospital unless they called us and asked us to come in. Of course, we had to go in, and get our keys and an activity sheet to write down, and the keys to the Cushman scooter or whatever, and that kind of stuff. And we could go in and eat in the cafeteria and go in to use the bathroom, but they really did not want us in there. And so anyway, of course I had to go through orientation, like I was an employee of the hospital. That was required. So for a week there was orientation. And by the way, so I was the only security officer doing this orientation. And everybody else was nurses and lab techs and x-ray techs and that kind of stuff. So the person doing the orientation says, okay, well, today, the entire day, we're required by federal law to tell you what we did wrong and how we were fined X amount of money and how all employees are to watch out for cheating on Medicare and billing and that type of stuff, and then the handouts and stuff. And I thought, oh my God. But then also, just to give you an idea, the person leading the class and everything, said, when we're having this week, okay, now, most of you people, I'm sure, have your CPR certification, but there are a few of you who, probably don't have your CPR certification, but you're going to have it. We'll give you the certificate, before. And then Of course, the lady points to me and says, "Now I know you don't have your CPR certification." And I said, "Yeah, I'm CPR certified, and also I'm a CPR instructor." And it was like, "Oh," and several times during the thing, it was like, "I know, but you know." So I knew I made a mistake, but then okay, so then when I'm working there and I'm not supposed to be in the hospital unless they. Oh, I told the. Of course, I never saw really I forget, but I said, we need to be, we need to know about the inside of the hospital, where elevators are, where staircases are, uh, where if somebody gets stuck on an elevator, where is the tool to get the elevator door open. I went through and the guy just looked at me like, what the fuck, you know? No. So, so I'm working one day there, and they call, we need security inside. There's a lady who is afraid to ride on the elevators, and would you come in and show her how to get upstairs? So I go in, and I'm going in, and then I get in there. Anyway, I find the lady, and then oh shit, I'm thinking, okay, well, staircases are usually close to, the elevators, or okay. I can't find a staircase. And the lady's following me around. So I look, and then I think, okay, well, then it'd be usually it'd be, and I go and look, okay, I can't find a staircase. Then an employee's coming around, I said, where are the stairs, And a person, I think they're over there. I go over there, no stairs. And I said, I'm sorry, felt like a fucking idiot. But I wasn't. I was mad at the hospital administration, this crap, So I thought, oh, okay, wait a minute. I know because I'm outside all the time. I know where the fire escapes come, These are not fire escapes on the side of the building. They're enclosed. So, so I say, okay, and we step outside, and then I know where there's a door, and I use the key to get in, and then take her up the stairs to where and then there were some other things like that happened, and just, you know, then the way this hospital operated, their emergency room, which is okay, I mean, it's okay to do it that way. The emergency the entrance, for like when the ambulances came or whatever, the ambulance people knew what code to punch to get in right directly into the emergency room with somebody on a cart or whatever. And, but, so the way when you drove around, when you pulled up to where, you could unload a patient or whatever. Oh man, more I think about it, I shouldn't have started this. A guy pulls up there, and he had his mother in the car. And I went over, and he said, this is my mother, her left arm is hurting, and she's having shortness of breath and heart attack. Probably. I said, let me get you a wheelchair. And I got a wheelchair, put her in a wheelchair. And I said, why don't you just grab a parking spot over there and I'll take her on in. I went on in. Now I knew the code that inside that was the same as the outside to punch, but I knew how this hospital was. The lady who was the head ER nurse that was in charge of I think she might have been in charge of all 3 shifts or something. But there was a smoking area outside where the employees had to go, and she was one out there, and she was one who told me as I was making my rounds outside in the Cushman scooter. Once she called me over a few times, well, it's cloudy or whatever. You may get hit by lightning. You shouldn't be out, Went back to patrolling, and she just kept doing, She thought she was, and but I knew how she was, and I just knew, okay, and partially because of, well, we never had that kind of experience at other, but so I could have just went over and punched the code, pushed the patient, said this lady's having, whatever. But I didn't. I took the desk by where they had the women sitting there, behind glass, and I said, this lady's having, shortness of pain and diaphoretic and whatever. And the lady, the clerk said, "Oh, push the button." Push the button, and the door opened, and I wheeled the patient in there and said to the nurse, blah blah blah. Then I went outside, and of course, when I pushed it in, right there was that head nurse. So I'm outside patrolling, and she motions for me to come on over and said, "Don't ever do that again." And I said, I knew, do what? Don't bring a patient in there. She said, there's a thing out there, just, and what she was talking about was when you came into the waiting room with your mother, maybe, who's having chest pains, I actually, well, okay, maybe I'll get to that. I probably will. No, I may, because it popped in my head. The way that hospital was set up was you came in and you went up to the window where there was nobody, because there was a space behind that where the door was like closed, and there was the nurse who was supposed to screen the thing or whatever. The person wasn't up there at the window. The person was always back there doing, maybe talking to somebody, looking around or whatever. So you would come up and you would write down patient's name. There was a form there to fill out with a pen. They've supplied you with a pen. Patient's name, date of birth, problem or something like that. Chest pains, shortness of breath, diaphoretic, and you put it in the tray. And then the person back there, has some coffee, talks to the other nurse, and then, of course, I actually, took a few people, and I actually, I was making rounds, and it was about time for the medical building to be locked up. And I went up and I went inside, of course. Now, of course, if somebody was inside, I wasn't locking them in. I mean, they could hit a crash bar and get out. You can't lock somebody in a building and let it catch fire and they burn, trying to get out, But I went inside and there was this guy, in the lobby, and I said, "Can I help you?" "No, that's okay." I said, "Well, I'm here to help you if you need any kind of help. What's going on?" "I'm here to see my doctor." "Which doctor's that?" "Dr. So-and-so." "Oh, are you not feeling well?" "Well, no, I'm here to have an operation. He's going to cut my head off." And I said, "Oh, okay. No, they don't do that here." I said, "I need to take you over to the emergency room." Now, I forget the name of the system. I don't think they're around. I don't think it's working now with cell phone. But the walkie-talkie that I had was also like a cell phone, except I'm not sure if you could even make a call, but you could call people. So I could punch and call the emergency room, or I could punch and actually, believe this or not, I never ever did it, would never have done it, but I could press a number and I could call the plant operations head of the plant operations or the hospital administrator at home. They had to keep their phone. It wasn't a cell phone exactly, but they had to keep that on. One of the guys, the head of the plant operations or whatever, mentioned that they'd gone to, I forget what to say, we were in Orlando, so maybe Miami or something. He went to a sporting event or something, and he had to take his radio, he had to take this thing with him. what the fuck? And it was some head nurses, and I don't know who all was on this thing. And one time, or one or two times, I was out in the parking lot dealing with something, and I get, like a call, ER calls or somebody calls on the thing, and I didn't immediately answer because I was dealing with somebody, and the guy in charge of plant operations at home, or I guess he was at home, he could have been at a brothel, he could have been, I don't know where in the hell he was, but he calls on the thing, security, ER is calling you. He was home. He wasn't there. There's no fucking way that there was times that I was at another hospital, or at a hospital back in Kansas City, where I was one hospital I was usually, I wasn't the lieutenant. Well, sometimes I was the lieutenant because the lieutenant had a heart attack a few times, but I was normally a shift supervisor. But the director of security really didn't want the lieutenant to be, if the director of security was going to be on vacation, he'd arrange for the lieutenant to be on vacation too or something, usually. But there's no way that I would, I did have to be, they had to be able to reach me if something did come up. But when it did, the few times that something did come up when I was at home, and a security officer would call, Jim, what should we do about such and such? And then I'd say, Cleo, how do you think it should be handled? And, well, I said, unless the guy said something, I said, then that's the way to do it. And very rarely do they ever call me, But you think I would work at some hospital or any business and be it monitoring communications going on, or even, and not monitoring, or even taking the calls? I mean, now if I was on call, if I was a respiratory therapist and there was no respiratory therapist on call, and they're paying me X number of dollars per hour to be on call, fine, that's fine. But you think I'm going to go to a baseball game or do something and be carrying something with me? And God, anyway, these people. But I think I was heading somewhere and I totally forgot. Anyway, I quit that job. I didn't quit the job. I told the company after a while. What else happened? Oh, one time the head ER nurse who had one of these communication devices, I hear on the radio, security, security, we need an emergency room immediately. Don't you dilly-dally around. Don't you, what in the dilly, Oh, anyway. And I was already, by that time, I had already spotted these guys, and I was talking to them outside, and getting them off the property. And I went inside to find that head ER nurse, and it's a good thing. She was busy, or actually, I don't think it was a female. I think it was a guy that worked second shift or whatever. But it's a good thing he wasn't available. Of course, the worst that would happen is the company would have removed me, the security company, which was fine. I was sorry. I took that. And anyway, before long, I told another thing. I'm working this place, and they started doing some construction. They had a helicopter pad way out there, and they're doing some construction. And of course, it's going on, And I'm looking like, okay, it looks like they're building a new helicopter landing pad. Nobody says anything to me. Nobody asks me any questions. Nobody asks for my input or anything else. And then finally I can see it is a helicopter pad, and I can see where they have put the helicopter pad. And then the guy in charge of plant operations, he's getting ready to go home. And I said, okay, looks like you have a new helicopter pad. Yep, yep, yep. I said, and I see you have signs up here, all around here saying that people's cars are in danger. If you park in this area, that wasn't, they needed their parking. And it was like, I see you have these signs here that say that, you park here and your car may be damaged. We're not responsible because of the helicopter, rotors causing rock or something to come and hit your car or put somebody's eye out, by the way. So I said, I see you put the sign. Oh yeah, we have to do that because he says the helicopter will come right through here and it might kick up some gravel or whatever. I said, no, the helicopter is going to come in depending on which way the wind is blowing. And he said, no, we've put the lights. They had some things up, like with some red lights on them. They put some poles up, and that's where they'll see those red lights and they'll come through. I said, no, they're going to land according to where the wind. And I said, like such and such, And he says, well, no. He says, and I didn't bother to say, I have, at the hospital that I worked at, well, the main hospital that I worked at, that's where the helicopter was kept. And we had to go out and block off a road that came into it when the helicopter was landing. Somebody had to go out to make sure somebody didn't step outside the emergency room and, And then, of course, the small hospital that I worked at for altogether 10 years, they only had one security officer on duty at a time, and we didn't even have a security officer during the daytime. But we had to have training once a year on the helicopter situation, and the helicopter pilots were kind of arrogant, but they were nice. And like there's a shut off thing if you can get to it without getting your head chopped off. There's a thing that will shut down the rotors. If the thing comes down. We had at the small hospital a large, very large, on rollers, fire extinguisher. That if we didn't take it out, but if we had to get to it, we could get to it. But out there, anytime the helicopter landed or took off, we called the fire department and they responded out. My feeling is if you have to have a fire department respond out when a helicopter is landing or taking off, then that technology is not it's not ready for production. But in a way, that guy who was when that director of plant operation, whatever, when he said, no, the pilots will fly in, he might have been right, and I knew at the time, but I didn't tell him that, But he might have been right. I'm not sure, I have a feeling that the Vietnam pilots who flew helicopters in Vietnam, they could land probably anywhere they wanted to land, But I bet they were the ones who would come in, depending on the wind, would set down. But probably these other helicopter pilots, working for contract companies, they might just come in and fuck it, just fly between the lights and land, there. But anyway, as soon as I could, I told the contract company. And actually it was the truth. We'd moved to a different location in Orlando, a little further away. But I said, fine. They put me someplace else. They kept calling me occasionally. Could you come out? Or like they called, could you go out there for, no. I know. So, anyway, what's the craziest thing you ever witnessed while you were in the waiting room of a hospital emergency room? Okay, back before, I should read this maybe. It says, I recently took my 21-year-old daughter to the ER to get checked after a motor vehicle accident. We were brought back to the triage or for temporaries as such, where the nurse is talking to us and the door opens and this guy stumbles in, complaining he can't breathe, bleeding all over everything. They immediately took him to a bed and in the chaos pretty much forgot us for a moment. When they realized the severity of this guy's injuries, they ushered us back out in the waiting room where we got to watch the orderlies clean up the blood that was everywhere. Turns out the guy had been shot. When we were finally brought back into the finished triage and got a room to see a doctor, they thanked us for our patience. We both immediately replied it was okay. That guy was obviously in worse shape and needed immediate attention. The nurse was mildly surprised that we weren't angry. Apparently most people they see would be. Okay. Before I worked hospital security, and I think it was when we had the tropical fish shop for 4 years, one of my daughters got it was a, curtain rod thing, and it was like a ring on there, and got it on her little finger, or not her little finger, got it on a finger, and I couldn't get it off. I was afraid of, going to cut off the circulation or whatever. After being trained as an EMT, and then after working hospital security for X number of years, I knew, later that I could have done things. I put some soap on there and tried something. But later, when I saw the ER doctor or the nurses or whatever getting things off like that, I could have done. But it was my little girl, So I went to the emergency room with her. I came in it was Research Medical Center, a hospital that I ended up later working 18 years for that hospital, but I worked 9 or 10 of them at other smaller hospitals, but I was still, working, under the corporation, Health Midwest or whatever. But anyway, so went to Research Medical Center, went in, at that time, small waiting room area, filled up. And I was not an EMT, at that time, my wife and I owned a tropical fish shop, but I've been a Boilermaker and a welder and stuff like that in the past for years and years. No medical experience or whatever. But so we come in and it's crowded, and big sign, this is not a free hospital. We do not provide free medical care. If you come in here, you are expected to pay on delivery or something, something like that. I thought, oh, that's kind of harsh. It came in and then went up to the window and they had me filling out this stuff. And then some parents come in with a child that's bleeding. I forget where, but bleeding, maybe from the head, And I said, I think these people here need to get, and it was like, no. Complete, filling out as I'm writing as quick as I can or whatever. And then they told the, sit down, and then they get my information, then I go and then they call them over and the kid is bleeding and they're filling out the, information. And I thought, oh God, And then there was an elderly lady sitting there, and I guess her daughter or somebody, went up to the window and says, how long it's going to be, because the woman is like, I had no medical expertise. This person needs to be taken care of. And they told the woman, we'll get to you when we get to you, or something like that. The woman goes back grandma or mother or whatever it is falls on the floor, and of course then the nurses or whatever come out and they take her back. I thought, oh my God. But uh, as far as this, yeah, the emergency room is the triage area, and they really should have, an, instead of a clerk there at the window getting, what kind of insurance do you have, and this type of information. There should be a nurse right away triaging, looking, ABC, breathing, heartbeat, that type of thing. It should be that type of a situation. But uh, people will come in and be up, especially if a kid or whatever. We had somebody come in one hospital I worked at. The parents were freaking out. The kid had his, I think he had a nose, yeah, that was it. Okay, that was the one that had a nosebleed. And they were freaking out. But, I mean, of course, hey, I had four little kids, we had four kids, so. But the parents were freaking out. And there was a kid that came in one time who I think I'd have been worried about too. The had his tonsils taken out or something, and he was, coughing up, bleeding, a little bit. But yeah, an awful lot of people will say, expect you to take people in the order that they come in. And no, you have to, you have to take the ones that, breathing is important, or do they have chest pain, all types of things. And I've seen like the emergency room just at the main hospital. I mean, it was packed. It was a disaster. The place was packed. And I was working an 8 hour shift, I think, and we rotated. So I came in that day, and we had four like emergency room position, outside patrol position, um, garage, and then back at okay. So I started the emergency room, so I would be ending up in the emergency room for the 2 hours, 2, 4, 6, 8. So I came in, this guy came in, whatever his complaint was, and so he was waiting. So I work my next 2 hour position, I come back to the emergency room, that guy is still there, and then finally he gets up and he goes over and he tells the ER clerk, "This is ridiculous. I've been here for 6 hours, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going someplace else." And I think I actually, I think I said to him, all the hospitals are probably, probably busy. I know you've been here a long time. I said, but, and he said, no, I'm going to go. I said, okay, He left. About an hour or so, he went over to Baptist Hospital, which was like 10 blocks away or something. And before I left, he came back and he said they were busy too. So he went up, signed up again. But people do, a lot of them don't understand. You know, and occasionally you see somebody comes in, blood pumping out of them, maybe you would hope that they would realize this person needs to go first. But a lot of times somebody comes in, like asthma or bronchitis or something like that, breathing is really And an awful lot of people, and the nurses had to tell a lot of people, you know, people would bring that little kid in or something with asthma, and sometimes those people would be, oh, I'm awful sorry, I know it's not serious, and the nurses would say, breathing is important. Anytime you're having difficulty breathing, you know, a lot of people think that asthma is caused by uh, nerves or something, if somebody's having difficulty, now they've got these pulse ox. I'll put a link below. They're very inexpensive, $20 or whatever. When I was going through my EMT training, I mentioned this I think before, I had to do a rotation for a while in the emergency room, work, kind of interesting, because I was wearing, scrubs and that type of stuff, and kind of interesting. I knew I was an EMT, not even studying to be a paramedic, getting ready to be, I was last thing before taking my EMT test, but my last thing, was doing that rotation. But me being an old man and everything, and I'd go over and take somebody's blood pressure and get their temperature and breathing rate. That was probably about it. Maybe they didn't have they didn't have pulse ox things, or did they? I can't remember. And I did very little, And a lot of people would say, "Oh, doctor, how is?" Oh, I'm just a EMT in training. Well, I hope I didn't say just, but I'm an EMT in training. Doctor so and so, Dr. McCrae will be over here in just a minute to take care of you. But especially with the virus, I haven't purchased them, but those pulse ox things you go in the as soon as the first thing now they do when you go in the hot, well, not just because of this, but before all of this, put that thing on you, and it gives your oxygen, how much oxygen you're getting, the whatever. Uh, that they never mentioned to me about. So, but I noticed everybody that I did, the number was high in the 90s or whatever. And so anyway, when I would take the thing over and give it to the nurse, but anyway, this person came in, seemed fine, and I got the vitals, and the pulse ox thing was on there, and I don't think I wrote that down because it was a little bit, and I didn't think that it was a problem, and I forget what it was. Maybe I'm thinking like 89 or something. I mean, I was thinking to myself, anything above 75 should be fine, like a test, test 75, that's passing, and but it was different than the other, lower, not a lot, but a little bit lower. So I said to Virginia or whatever, the nurse, uh, Virginia, the pulse ox here is, let's say it was 91 or something. I said, it's 91, is that okay? No. She came over right away and then told the doctor, I forget exactly what the number was, and told the doctor, we got this, whatever. And I think he actually pushed the crash cart over. And then I was like, oh shit, I didn't say oh shit, I was thinking oh shit, and then later, I said, Virginia, on the pulse ox, what is the number supposed to be, what if it's, then she told me, and it was something like, if it's below, I forget, 90, but anyway, say 95, I don't know. But I'm thinking about buying, especially with the virus. It's only like $20 from Amazon. They got a whole bunch of different ones. And you don't need there at the hospital, you got this thing on your finger, then you got the thing that runs into the machine that's beeping and flashing the lights and all this kind of stuff. With this, it's just put that on your finger, Because I've heard with the virus situation or whatever that if especially if you're having something, and if you have the pulse ox thing, which I think they do recommend, they recommend you don't touch your eyes, by the way, and I touch my eyes all the time. they recommend you have a pulse ox, and I guess they tell you probably in the instructions also. But if you're having a little bit of trouble or something, and you do the pulse ox, and especially if like you think you have maybe the flu, because the flu season is coming up. I hope you've had your flu shot. It's really important to everybody probably wants, well, not everybody, but people could be getting the virus shot, but it's very important. The flu season and the virus season are going to overlap, and you're not going to know. Maybe you're going to just have the flu, and with the pulse ox thing, you could tell. If it would be, if you think you got the flu, but if the pulse ox is, call 911 or whatever. So I think I'm going to purchase one. Anyway, I think I answered. Well, I didn't do a very good job on this. Yeah, the patients are taken according to severity, and a lot of times you can't tell that by somebody coming. If you're sitting there and you're wanting to be treated, or you got a little child or something or other, and somebody walks in that looks fine. I've seen those. I've seen that. I've seen that happen. Somebody walk in and fall over dead, and looking fine or whatever. We had a nurse working, a male nurse, working at the emergency room or whatever, and he had just started. Now, he'd been in the military as a paramedic or whatever, whatever they call them. I forget which branch of service he was in. Then he came out and he was I think he was like me, an EMT. I think he was a paramedic. And then he worked at a few little hospitals, not very long. And then he ended up working at our emergency room. And a patient came in that was bleeding, I think from the leg, I believe. And he took him back to a treatment room, which was kind of unusual. I don't think the other spots were all filled up. He took him back and closed the door. And then finally, one of the other nurse that was working, Diane, she said, I better check. And she went back there, and then I heard her yelling or whatever. This guy, I forgot what happened to his leg. He was bleeding. He was going to bleed out. This male nurse was like getting his pulse and getting his temperature and respiration rate and doing stuff that I could have done as, and this guy was bleeding out, but, big time. He needed, and anyway, Diane took over, but she was really upset, so. Anyway, now of course that person, if you'd have seen it, but anyway, thank you very much for watching. What am I looking for? Oh, okay. Looking for that.